two disallowed goals, especially the one right at the death when Johor Darul Takzim were trailing 1-0 to Buriram United at home in the second leg of the AFC Champions League Elite. In the 90th plus 97th minute, Obregon appeared to have given the Southern Tigers a lifeline when he acrobatically converted a cross from Arif Aiman in what appeared to be the equaliser, and that actually initially sent the 30,000 plus who were still inside the stadium into raptures, only for the referee and the first assistant referee to rule otherwise. In fact, what was noticed was the assistant referee instantly raised the flag after the goal was scored while the crowd was in euphoria. And from the angle where I watched, I thought it was legitimate. I thought despite at times a less than convincing outing for the home side tonight, Johor pressed so hard that they should have gotten the equaliser. It was like double jeopardy for JDT. That double jeopardy that, in retrospect, having looked at the replays, having looked at various images, it should have stood. The goal by Obregon should have stood in the 90th plus 7 minute. But for some reason, VR did the checks and all that and deemed it otherwise. And from what I understand, there appears to be some kind of issue, behind the scenes issue, that probably led to this delay. It's lamentable, very lamentable, that Johor Darul Takzim had to exit once again at the round of 16 in the AFC Champions League Elite, while Buriram United of Thailand move on to their first ACLE quarterfinal since 2013. Still, when we first look back at that controversial goal, my opinion is it should have stood. But football is split at split-second moments, and that thin fine line between victory and defeat could be measured by millimeters. I mean, with the introduction of the virtual assistant referee, it was supposed to help correct the decisions and view the angles where human eyes could have fallen short. But in this case, the Obregon goal, it was a wonderful goal. It was something that JDT deserved despite the unconvincing play. But the assistant referee immediately raised up the flag, and it was for offside. But for who? Really, for who? And when you look at the replay, Herberty was in an offside position, but he was at the far end when Arif launched his cross. Obregon was the one that was onside, was made onside, even by the finest of margins, by Dion Kus. And that was exactly roughly at the split-second moment when Arif released the ball up into the box. And for some reason, the VAR officials did not think the same way and decided that probably that what the first assistant referee saw was accurate, and the QAT referee also followed suit. And in making that decision and confirming it, it sealed JDT's fate in the AFC Champions League Elite, and it ended on a whimper as once again JDT failed to get past the first knockout round of the competition. But in the bigger, grander scheme of things, looking at the whole 90 minutes, take away that Obregon goal in the 90 plus 7 minutes, and also Bergson's goal in the first minute that was ruled out offside after VAR review. Did JDT really deserve to go through? The unfortunate answer is no. Why not? If JDT head coach Hector Bidoglio tried to pull a fast one over Buriram by making a few changes in his starting 11, it clearly did not pay off. In fact, it appeared to have at times, in spite of their dominance on the ball in the first half and even the late pressure towards the last 20 minutes, it was that first 15 minutes of the second half that proved to be the Achilles heel for the Southern Tigers. And that was despite fielding what was on paper a similar squad that had been featured consistently for much of their continental campaign this season. But it was not to be. How much it was not to be? I think from the way how JDT lined up from the very start and how JDT approached the game, and especially their response critically after they fell behind by a Supana Mutena goal. That was when JDT decided that it was, you can say, downhill from there on from them. And it was made worse actually with rather confused decision making by Bidoglio. But first I will go into details on what went wrong for JDT tonight and what actually went right for Buriram. And if we look at JDT's starting 11 tonight, Bidoglio caught a few gambles. You can say gambles. Shane Lowry, who is still sporting a shoulder injury, returned to the starting 11, replacing Park Jun Hyung, who was totally omitted from the squad outright. And he partnered in a 3-man in the left centre back role alongside the regulars Isafilov and Alvaro Gonzalez. And then you have Oscar Arribas, who plays down as the left wing back, and Arif Aiman on the right. But in Arif's case, he was more on a relatively advanced position than Arribas. Then you got Nacho Insa and Afiq Faisal. Yes, Afiq Faisal in centre mid. Nacho, not surprising, but Afiq Faisal instead of Anselmo was rather curious. Then you had Samu Castillo making his first JDT start after coming on as a substitute in the first leg. And he's played on as a right forward alongside Bergson, who held the fort in the middle, and Jonathan Vieira, who was supposed to be the left forward. So in a way it was a rather semi-lopsided 5-3-2 or 5-2-3, or you can say 3-4-3 wing-back position, where Arif was supposed to play more on the right as an attacker and Oscar Arribas was supposed to be given the free rein forward. And the thing is, if the intent was to strike while the iron is hot at first whistle, they almost pulled it off. Arif Aiman threatening on the right, threading the pass. Etheridge made the save, but the ball fell kindly to Bergson, who slotted the ball home in less than a minute. Crowd in raptures, but the referee ruled it out for offside after VAR check. And looking back at the replay, having watched the game, unfortunately Bergson was clearly offside, so there is no dispute with that. Still, JDT kept playing, and Buriram kept much of their lineup that also featured in the first leg, making only one change from their home leg at Thunder Castle. Tiraton Bumata is available, but yet he is still not in the matchday squad. But it could be he's given an additional suspension without us knowing, but I will not go that far. But still, Osmar Loss, the Buriram coach, believed that ensuring the continuity of the same of almost the same 11 would give them the advantage despite them playing away. And they did threaten in bits and pieces in the first half, especially when Zubair had to pull off a big save as early as the 7th minute. But generally in the first half, it was largely JDT having the ball, trying to attack, pushing the ball forward and all that. But there was something rather ominous in how Buriram was setting themselves up for the second half. Because for JDT, they were trying to play trying to play a patient passing game, trying to probe and break, finding the spaces to break as usual, as they had consistently been trying to do throughout the ACLE campaign. But Buriram came with a slightly different approach, because unlike the home leg where they were on the offensive, in the first 45 minutes they were on the defensive, but their interceptions were precise, their movements were spot on. It was just that they weren't as fluid enough to cause more problems apart from the last few minutes of the first half. And because of that, Buriram were able to hold on for their goalless draw. And like the previous two games between these two teams this season's ACLE, it was almost headed for a goalless affair. Then came the second half. And in this second half, JDT were probably hoping that they could do the same, but Buriram actually step up the tempo. And they forced JDT into the awkward position on being on the back foot, because they probably discovered where all the little weak points of JDT's defensive positioning were. And eventually, there was only so much JDT could do when Isafilov blocked a Buriram shot in the 58 minute, but that ball came into Supana Mutena's path, who was a key threat in this early phase of the second period. And all Supana needed to do was to curl the ball beyond the reach of Oscar, of Andoni Zubair, and that proved to be the only goal of the game. The thing is, when you are a goal down, what are you supposed to do? How is the coach going to react? How are the players going to react? Unfortunately, what came after the sucker punch just before the hour mark, JDT ultimately failed the test. And in JDT's case, it took them until the 71st minute to make their first substitution. And they were still trying to pass the ball around, trying to move the ball around, trying to still find that space where they could be lethal, as what they had done previously in their previous home games. But here's a little caveat. In the league stage, the only team to deny JDT all 3 points at home happened to be Buriram. And once again, Buriram held firm. They generally held firm, although they were torn apart at times. But questions abound a lot more from what Hector Bidoglio was doing. It's like Buriram were already making a couple of substitutions by the hour mark. But what about Bidoglio? It took him 71st minute to finally to throw in Herberty for Afif Faisal. So push another extra man forward, followed by a like-for-like substitution where Bergson was taken out with Jesse, the former Real Madrid striker, coming in. And then you got Ariba's sacrifice for Obregon. So it's clear that JDT by then were trying to throw more strikers into the game to force the equalizer. And curiously, for long periods of time, two particular JDT players were invisible in the second half. They were the recent signings this year, Jonathan Vieira and Samu Castillejo. Samu Castillejo was thrown into, you can say right forward, but he was given a free role where he was allowed to move anywhere he liked within the final third and in the attacking portion in midfield. And what happened was, Castillejo had a decent first half where he had 2 block shots and a miscue, but he was totally anonymous in the second half. Then you had Vieira, who was supposed to be the linchpin in the attacking midfield in place of Juan Muniz, who was an unused substitute on the bench. But you had Juan Muniz, Murillo, these guys who had impressed previously in the ACLE campaigns, especially Murillo with his bombarding runs on the left. Muniz, who is able to provide some trickery with his play and especially with his set pieces in the final third, they were totally unused. It's like, and the most curious part, Arif Aiman suddenly being shafted to the left. What happened? It's like Bidoglio had no idea what to do. Already, even in the first half, Bidoglio had no answer to what was, in this case, a very tightly locked in Buriram back 5. Because Buriram are playing a similar back 5 formation where, yes, Luca Crispin, who is more accustomed to the attacking role, was more vulnerable, and JDT kept attacking for much of the first half. But the centre back three of Curtis Good, the Australian defender, Ken Dogao, the Buriram captain of the evening, and South Korean defender Ko Myung Seok. These three were almost impregnable. Then you had New Etheridge, sometimes in games the quality of the goalkeepers do make a difference, the presence and all that. This is not to say that Adoni Zubair is a bad goalkeeper. No, far from it. He's also a good goalkeeper, but Etheridge level and being able to rise up for the occasion was slightly higher. So Etheridge edges Zubair on this front. Then you had Dion Koos, and for some reason it's quite puzzling. JDT tried to attack Dion Koos in the first half, it didn't work. They tried to attack in the middle, no way through. They tried to attack Crispin, there was something, but Crispin was more than up for the occasion despite his defensive frailties, because it's not something that he's accustomed to doing. And again, it's like switching Arif, who is more effective, he's very effective, impactful on the right. I think you are trying to ask him to be as equally impactful on the left. He did more than the other attacking forwards in the second half, but he was up against Dion Koos. He could probably evade Dion Koos a few times, but eventually their backline is a lot more organised and harder to break down than JDT's, where the back three, while excellent in their touches and their first touch and very comfortable on the ball, on occasion they do feel a little awkward when they were forced to keep tracking back, especially Alvaro, who was supposed to be the best among the three defenders, centre backs, but it's Shane Lowry who showed that even despite him unable to react in time to prevent Supana from scoring the winner, he was still the bravest and hardest working centre back there. But there lies the question, what is Bidoglio trying to do? And it unfortunately shows that when the pressure is on, JDT unfortunately failed the test. And this is against your a fellow Southeast Asian opponent, which perhaps underline the very different strategies, and also perhaps rather damningly the level of competition JDT and Buriram face in their respective domestic league competitions. Because for Buriram, they do have close title challenges. It's BG Patong, you got your Bangkok United, you got Port FC, who are always serious contenders. But what about JDT? Fresh from their 11th successive Malaysian Super League title, but quite a long distance away from the second place team, which is yet to be decided. And it also partially doesn't help that the decision making of throwing somebody into his second start at such a do or die game, it's more of a gamble, but it really did not pay off. Putting Vieira, by then he already had, this is his fourth game, it didn't pay off either. So ultimately, it's the failings of Bidoglio to recognize that there were issues to be fixed, to deal with, and not having Murillo to do the predictable things that could have given them the extra edge. Muniz with his creativity, it really was the detriment. It took Bidoglio, the Argentinian, with just 20 minutes left to finally make his move. That's not the makings of a good tactician. It's like when you go down, probably in football manager speak, you're supposed to try to do something to try to react, because when the margins of victory are so thin, so fine, a goal makes a critical difference. It's more like double the advantage, where a tie is very finely poised. Buriram got it right, JDT got it wrong. And is Bidoglio really suited? Could he really still be trusted to lead JDT into the next season's Champions League campaign, given that he's an Argentinian and many of them are La Liga players, and some of them were not registered in the Malaysian Super League? So it's like they have the high level of quality of play, but their ability to integrate and blend in with the rest, that includes other foreigners who have been in JDT for a while, to suit the system, to suit the demands of how JDT works, as if they become more cosmopolitan or head towards a Spanish style of play compared to the previous Argentinian way of playing things. That's a shift, and this transition is not yet fully in place yet. And Bidoglio, I'm afraid, when it comes to the crunch, the Argentinian clearly failed his test. And coming back to the Obregon disallowed goal, JDT is likely to appeal, and they could appeal on the basis where probably they feel that VAR make a wrong decision. But there's a but. I've also checked the ACLE competitions manual, and this was what I also realized in Article 63.3, where it states in a nutshell that the referee's decision is final and binding, and is not subject to appeal unless there's a big unless stipulated in AFC disciplinary and ethics code, which from my checking from Ahmed, which was last published in 2019, there's not really a latest 2024, unless a viewer from TMJ can tell me that there's otherwise. But in the same case where the VAR is used or misused, this is where JDT could possibly contest, but it is unlikely to overturn the result, which is lamentable because because of the great lengths the Tunku Mahkota Johor, the region of Johor, of the states, where he has invested so much money, considerable amounts, to get these foreigners to come to dramatically raise the level, to show that JDT can compete alongside some of the best clubs in East Asia, whether it's your Chinese clubs, the Korean clubs, where they have proven to be generally successful. And even though they have yet to meet a Japanese club throughout this competition, it would have been interesting to see how the Southern Tigers have coped against the J1 powerhouses. And what is also lamentable is that 2 goals that were ruled out for offside, one for clear offside, unfortunately for Bergson, and one that was an incorrect decision but still open to dispute. It ended this tie on a very sour note. But still, Bidoglio has unfortunately shown that he has cracked. He ran out of ideas where the home fans who turn up in force, more than 33,000 turn up, and Bidoglio could only master these flimsy answers, throwing more forwards, yes, pushing Arif to the left, and possibly we do not know what he was trying to do what they were trying to do on the right, and yet with that controversial goal, Arif was playing on the right. So what was Bidoglio trying to do? What were the coaching team trying to make out of this? And the almighty failure to break down the rather stubborn and stout Buriram defense led by Dion Cruz, even though he was all the way at right wing back, but that back three and New Aldridge, that presence, JDT could not find answers. Then what about Johor's ambitions in the Asian club competitions in the near future? Right now, it's back to the drawing board. But what is TMJ going to do? It's like they have reached around 16 now, twice. First time, back in 2021 or 2022, they fell to Urawa Red Diamonds in round 16. Fair enough, the gap is very wide. This time against Buriram United, they fell to the Thai champions, and it somehow enhanced Buriram's owner Biwin Chichok's claim that TMJ could spend a lot, but Buriram is still ultimately the stronger outfit, and the result unfortunately does not lie for the Southern Tiger, because it's quite damning. But what can they do to push up to another level? Because the last thing you need, and I know it's rather ironic because of JDT's partnership with Paris Saint-Germain, the French powerhouses, is, of all things, being the Asian Paris Saint-Germain. I know, not pleasant, but it's a big irony to wrap it up. Johor's exit from this year's AFC Champions League elite competition. It's once again lamentable. If Obregon's goal had stood, who knows what could have happened in extra time. But unfortunately, once the referee's decisions are made, even on VAR, it requires a special circumstance to force a replay, which I doubt is not going to happen. And not if Hector Bidoglio's tactics had backfired and shown and exposed himself as rather out of that. And with that, I wrap up this Johor's Darul Takzim's AFC Champions League campaign, where I've covered all these games in my comments and analysis for Tanya. Have a good evening or morning.